Hello, and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym Podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast number 2047. The topic is training, and the title is Paralysis by Analysis. Are you working hard enough, or does your program suck? Fun title there. A new client had reached out to me, and I wanted to share their story. They wrote, Rob, I need help. I want to be well-rounded in strength, muscularity, and athleticism. My goals are to squat and deadlift twice my body weight, bench my body weight, look lean and muscular, but also be able to run 3 miles in under 20 minutes. I'm struggling to find a good program that is appropriate for my current skill levels. Most programs I find are either too much lifting and I feel that my running suffers, or they're too much running and I feel that my lifting suffers. I'm really struggling and don't know what program to actually use. So we set up and we did a call. One of the things I told them this is off my notes, but it was interesting to see their goals. Given my history in working with just so many people, to be able to squat and deadlift twice your body weight and bench your body weight, for most people is actually going to be easier to achieve than running 3 miles in under 20 minutes. 3 miles in under 20 minutes is pretty advanced level. Now, as I talk to them, they're actually not coming from a strength history or a running history. They're really not athletic. So I thought it was interesting, and we discussed how they set goals. And what was fun was they said it just sounded good to them. I loved that in the sense that they didn't hinder themselves based on what they perceived to be possible based on if they had looked up standards, for running or standards for lifting. They just liked the idea of things. And in some ways, that's awesome because it doesn't place limitations. But in other ways, that could be in the long run or down the line, extremely frustrating because their goals in strength, the squat, deadlift, twice body weight, bench body weight, that's probably going to happen faster than the ability to run 3 miles in 20 minutes, given that this person doesn't have a history in either, and they're coming from a place of actually being overweight. If a person was underweighted, they were very light, already very lean, the running would have, a better possibility to happen. But one of the things I was discussing with them, in a sense, was when we're picking goals, there is a process you can use to kind of set yourself up well in order to select goals that are going to be achievable. So a podcast that could be helpful to listen to when you're trying to decide on goals is podcast 1703. If you're trying to find older podcasts, you can most podcast players will go back 100 up to 300 episodes. Our podcast on our website goes back 300 episodes, but underneath that we have instructions on how to find older podcasts. So podcast 1703 is a Q&A podcast titled Setting Smart Goals for Fat Loss and Muscle Building. SMART is actually an acronym on trying to set smart goals in the sense of goals that are achievable. Yeah, so anyhow, S stands for specific. The goal should include the detail of what you want to accomplish. So instead of I want to lose weight, well, how much? I want to lose 20 pounds. So it has to be specific. Measurable. You should be able to measure the progress and determine if you're actually achieving the goal. So for example, if his goal is to run 3 miles in 20 minutes, we would check out his current pacing. How fast can he run it now, or how fast can he run 1 mile at a time? And then we would have those pacing numbers to measure as we make progress. Achievable. Your goal should challenge you, but should be based on your capabilities and past successes. So this was the part that most people, I'm trying to think how to word this is. For most people, if you said to a trainer, I want to be able to run 3 miles in 20 minutes, if they're a running coach or they have a running history, and they coach people for that, so they have a history and knowledge of that, but you have no running previously, they're probably going to tell you that that's not going to happen or that's going to be insanely challenging. So finding the right coach who's motivational can be helpful, but also to set some specifics. So, for example, when I asked this person how fast can they run 3 miles now, they can't run 3 miles continuously. They actually have to walk part of it. So to go from an inability to even be able to run 3 miles to getting to 3 miles in 20 minutes, that's like almost advanced / elite level running. We might have to first say, can you just run 3 miles in, 30 minutes? And then 29, then 28, then 27. So we talked about that. Is it achievable? I'm certainly sure as hell not going to say no. But I would say, set yourself up mentally to think that this is going to take some time. And they were actually okay with that because they liked the idea that some of the strength-based goals, like another goal they have is to perform a pull-up. They can't do a pull-up right now. Some of the strength-based goals were more short-term, and the running was more of a long-term. So we were talking about the benefits of having both short-term and long-term goals, as the short-term kind of motivates you towards the long-term. You don't want only short-term because then you're maybe not achieving your maximal capacity of what you truly could do, but you don't want only long-term because then it takes forever and it's hard to stay motivated. So a good mixture of short-term and long-term is good. The R in the SMART goals is relevant. The goal should align with your overall theme. So, for example, they want to get stronger in squat, bench, deadlift, and be able to run, have good muscle development and be lean, and then they mentioned later on that they want to be able to do a pull-up. Well, being strong enough to do a pull-up will definitely contribute towards back and thoracic bracing for squat, bench, and deadlift, as well as muscular development, healthy shoulders, a lot of other things. So it was an additional little mini goal, but it's definitely relevant. And you want to make sure that your short-term goals add up to the long-term goals, that they're all relevant and have reasons for how the short-term would build up to the long-term. And then the last thing, the T is time-bound. The goal should have a deadline. So we were talking about, what could we realistically do in the next 6 months, the next 12 months, the next 24 months. So we were actually looking out 24 months, 2 years ahead. So I wanted to throw that out there, just like kind of the idea of setting goals, and throw out that podcast number 1703. So when we chatted in our Zoom chat, so we had a recent Zoom chat, I asked them what they have been doing now. And a lot of what they were telling me were things that they were contemplating doing. So when he was telling me about all the programs that he had mentioned in the original message, he didn't actually do them all. There were at least 8 programs in total, because as he was naming them, I started going, holy crap, I want to probably keep count of this because it seems like a lot. So he actually probably named more than 8, but I counted 8 by the time I realized I should start counting. So he was talking about 8 programs, but when I asked how long he had followed any of the programs, he had only done one program for 8 weeks, but didn't even actually get it right. I'll get back to that in a second. He was 8 weeks of being attentive to it, but maybe the last 2 to 4 weeks he actually had everything in place. The other programs he didn't even do for more than 2 or 3 weeks at a time, or he didn't do them at all. So a lot of it was just contemplation. I asked about nutrition. He said that, he gave me several diets he was considering. He had talked about, fasting diet for longevity. Then there was, these fat-based keto diets that are supposed to be better for fueling running, because running is more of an oxygen-based activity versus an anaerobic-based activity. So it was just way too many details. But what's interesting was he wasn't doing any of it. He wasn't doing any of the diets. So in our discussion, it was clear that he was suffering from paralysis by analysis. While trying to find the perfect program, he wasn't doing any of them. He wasn't doing any of them well. His training over the past 8 weeks has been inconsistent. He had a lot of travel. He lacked motivation on certain days, so he just skipped workouts. He just wasn't consistent. Nutrition over the last 8 weeks. Some good days, some good meals, but often he'd have days he underate because he felt unmotivated, felt fat, so he just didn't eat anything, but he knew he underate, but he didn't know what to eat, so I better undereat than overeat. Then he had other days he overate because screw it, I don't know what I'm doing, nothing seems to be working, I might as well just eat whatever the hell I want. So it was just completely sporadic. If he didn't have the perfect approach, he doesn't feel motivated for any approach. And that's actually quite common. People struggle with putting in maximal effort without a clear vision. They may find an approach they believe in, they start, but then they see other information. Maybe it counters some of the information from the approach they're using, or it has extra elements that they hadn't even been thinking of. And then they become demotivated because they're overwhelmed and confused and uncertain as to what actually works best. Instead of continuing to put some effort, even if it's not 100% the best thing in the world, but if they're just doing something, they tend to do nothing. Minimal, inconsistent effort. How can we address this? One of the ways to address analysis by paralysis is to realize that adherence matters most. Adherence to any program matters more than the actual program. What do I mean by that? You want to focus on building the skill set needed to follow a approach, like any approach, any program, as a precursor to, or in part of, during the journey of finding the quote-unquote right approach. Even if you end up finding the right approach, have you built up the skill set, the discipline, the motivation, the work-life balance, the priority life balance to be consistent in training, consistent in nutrition? The perfect approach doesn't work if you don't do it. But often, less than perfect approaches do work if you do them. They get something, even if it's not the most bestest outcome ever. They're still going to get something. Even a crappy program will get you better than where you are today. We just have to be consistent. Consistency is the key. Any program, good, bad, whatever, is going to require consistent training, consistent calories, consistent protein, and consistent data tracking. To address paralysis by analysis, focus on building program supporting habits as much as you're focusing on specifically what program to follow. Training. Can you be consistent with at least 3 training days a week? You might wonder, should I train at the gym, train at home, with weights, with body weight? Should I stretch? Which type of stretching is better? I heard static stretching might actually increase injuries before heavy lifting. Those questions matter, but they don't matter if you're not freaking training. If you're not even training 3 days a week consistently, what you do doesn't matter because you're not doing anything. Pick an approach that you believe will provide at least some positive development, or hire a coach and follow a program that they provide. And then aim for consistency. How consistent should you be in your training? Per 4 weeks, you should really only miss 1, maybe 2 training days. So per month, really you should only miss 1 or 2 training days. That's it. Now, to increase your consistency, you do want to have options. The best day option would be the programmed workout. An okay day option would be, I didn't get my workout in, but I can do some bodyweight exercises as a circuit for like 10 or 20 minutes. At least I get something in. Worst day scenario, just do 10 bodyweight squats, and you're like, hey, it's better than nothing. I kept the momentum. So having tiers of effort, like tiers of like how you do it, meaning like you got something in. There's a best day approach, an okay day approach, and the worst day approach. Elastic Habits is a great book for that, by the way. But when I say you should only miss 1 or 2 training days, it means that you should only have 1 or 2 days where you didn't do anything when you were supposed to do something. It doesn't mean every day has to be perfect and exactly as programmed, other than just 1 or 2 days per month. There might be a travel week where you don't have access to gym equipment that you need in your typical program. But you should still be doing something. You should still do bodyweight circuits. You should still do something. And that counts as getting something in. There really should only be 1 or 2 days per month where you just actually got nothing in. when you were supposed to. And creating levels, creating options is extremely helpful for that. Again, the book Elastic Habits will teach you how to do that better. And the same is true for nutrition. Pick a program that you believe will offer some positive development, or hire a coach and follow their program. How consistent should you be? 10 out of 14 days. So every 2 weeks, you want to have 10 days, so that's 5 out of 7 days a week, where you're definitely 100% within your dietary targets or parameters. If the goals are calories, protein, and timing, 10 out of 14 days, you should be within each of those. Not one of them, all of them. If your goals are specific food choices, where you're supposed to avoid certain foods and only eat certain foods, 10 out of 14 days. That's how consistent you should be. If your goal is specific timing windows, it really doesn't matter what you eat, but you can only eat during these times, 10 out of 14 days. To address paralysis by analysis, focus on building program supporting habits as much as you're focusing on what program to follow. Build the skill set needed to follow any approach. So you have those elements in place when you find an approach that you feel more confident with. Focus on what you are doing, not what the program is doing. By focusing on you, by focusing on consistency, by focusing on adherence, by trying to only miss 1 or 2 training days every 4 weeks, by trying to be within your nutritional targets 10 out of 14 days, you will know that you are working hard enough. You will likely see some positive progress with pretty much any approach. And you'll be developing the skill set needed to be consistent with any approach. So when you find the right approach, you have that in place. You already have that done. That work is completed. You can hit the approach and crush it. Now, how long should you stay with a specific approach? 8 weeks of correct adherence. Not just 8 weeks of doing it, 8 weeks where you actually were adherent, meaning 8 weeks where you only miss maybe 2 to 4 training days. 8 weeks where you hit your nutrition 40 days. So 8 weeks, let's see here. I'm going to break this down because I have it written in different ways. So 8 weeks is 4 units of 14 days. So that would be 40 days. Okay. So we want 40 out of 56 days. So 8 weeks is 56 days, if I'm doing my math correctly. We want to be adherent at least 40 out of those 56 days. So that's a 71.4% adherence, by the way. So if you can be at least 70% adherent with your nutrition, you're going to see some progress. And you would know then if the program actually creates progress, if it does something positive. So how do you know what's working? How do you know what's not working? Is it you or the program? Now you know. It's you. You are the problem if you're missing more than 1 to 2 training days per 4 weeks, if you're hitting your nutrition targets less than 10 out of 14 days. Then you are the problem. You want to work on figuring out why that is happening and what you can adjust in your life to make it happen more consistently. And that's a whole new podcast. But you are the problem. Focus on you. If you are adherent and you're only missing 1 or 2 training days per 4 weeks, you're adherent to your nutrition at least 10 out of 14 days. And again, those both things for 8 full weeks. 8 full weeks of 100% proper adherence according to these attributes. And if you do that for 8 full weeks and you don't see progress, then the program is the problem. So if you're struggling with paralysis by analysis, don't focus on the program, because trying to find the right program is actually the problem. Don't focus on the program. Focus on your adherence to the program. Adherence matters first. The actual program you choose matters second. So take care of first things first. If you have any questions, if you need anything, reach out on our website, www.brutalirongym.com. On the bottom of the homepage is a contact form. Send me any questions, send me anything you need at any time. If you like the podcast, please share the podcast. The more people that know about the podcast, the more people can be helped by the podcast. If you do like the podcast, you can consider donating to support the podcast, which you can do on the website. And if you like the information we share in the podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels. You can find us and follow us on Instagram and YouTube under the name Brutal Iron Gym. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.